We are very excited to have Susana Myung with us on the Fire series today. Before the age of 15, Susana's family had lived on 3 different continents, and her financial situation seemed to be just as jumpy. Our guest today was determined to create a better-than-average financial trajectory for herself, and today we talked to her after more than a decade of financial independence. We're very excited to have Scott join me for the Fire episode. Scott, welcome to the Fire series.
Thanks, Mindy. Burning passion of mine is talking about this topic, so excited to be here.
Okay, without further ado, let's bring in Susana. Susana, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Susana, you moved around quite a bit as a child, and I did too. Actually, not the continents, just a bunch of different states. Through these moves, your family experienced a wide range of financial situations. What was that like?
When we first started our move, I was just born, barely. I was 2 months old. I was born in Korea, and my parents moved to the Canary Islands, Spain, when I was 2 months old, actually. And they left with very little money. My mom says it was the equivalent of about $1,000. What it be now. They left the country with 2 children, 1 newborn, 1 3-year-old. I don't really know what it was like at the very beginning because I was way too young for that to remember. But I do remember growing up in the Canary Islands, and we were really poor at some point in my life. Like I remember my mom working really hard when I was about 5 years old and really, really struggling. They were really hard workers. So I feel like I was really lucky to be born in a family like that. And then we went through phases where they became extremely wealthy. We're lucky to be able to emigrate to the U.S. at that point.
What year did you emigrate to America?
1983.
And what was the situation like when you moved to the United States?
At that time, my parents were fairly well off. We moved to Queens, New York, which was a really rough place, especially coming from a culture. I mean, I grew up in the beach, basically. It was like paradise, and I just didn't know what it was like at that point. And then I moved to New York, and it was a very crazy culture shock and shell shock, really, because I didn't know the language well. I definitely did not know the culture. I was already a minority myself, being in the U.S. Even though by that point I learned 2 new languages and I was learning English, it was really, really difficult to go through that process. But I was lucky because my parents were financially well off at that point.
So this was like middle school that you were moving to the United States?
Yeah, I moved here when I was in 7th or 8th grade. I can't remember the exact details. And I remember having to trek all the way. We lived in Queens for 1 year in Forest Hills. I remember having to trek from Queens every day to New York City to an English academy so that I could learn English, so I could be ready for school the following fall.
So you're moving to America. Your parents were wealthy in the Canary Islands. How did you feel financially once you got to America?
We came from Spain, and so the peseta, which was the currency at the time, was not as strong as the American dollar. So even though we were wealthy in Spain, we were probably just like upper middle class when we arrived to the U.S. But my parents had gone through so many years of hardship, and they were children of the war, basically the Korean War. They lived through a lot of that. So that kind of shapes my parents' background, and I think we all inherit a little bit of what our parents basically bring into the table when it comes to financial security. So they were always very thrifty and money conscious, just being Asian immigrants, children of war, and then multiple immigrations in between as well.
Did growing up with financial insecurity factor into your decision to become a physician?
I don't think that was much of it. I mean, I think I always have had the idea that I wanted to do something that I loved and challenged me, but I did always want financial security. That was always my goal in the back of my mind.
Can you tell us about your kind of financial journey following the move to the United States and how you began accumulating wealth?
I mean, I graduated medical school with about $500,000 worth of debt because I went to one of the most expensive private medical schools. That was close by me. I should have just continued my interviews in the New York State schools, but I ended up not doing that. So what happened was I graduated with about $500,000 debt. And then I started making a little bit of money during residency. It wasn't a lot. It was probably enough just to pay my expenses and a little bit extra, which I started saving. I mean, I come from a fairly thrifty family. My entire family is like that. The majority of us are, and especially my parents are like that. So whatever I could, I started saving. Even when I graduated college and I started making just a little bit of money, I put it away in savings as well. And then when I went to private practice, but even through residency and fellowship, I didn't have that much time to spend the money that I made. So I've always saved a lot of it, as much as I could.
What kind of a physician were you?
Nephrologist, a kidney doc.
Okay, awesome. And what part of the world did you practice in? Was there a difference between residency, fellowship, and where you ultimately ended up practicing, and where were those locations?
I came to Phoenix, Arizona to practice. To do residency when I graduated medical school in New York. I stayed here for 3 years. Basically, I took 1 year off between residency and fellowship where I did ER. Basically, I was a contract worker. So I'd work basically 3 days and then take off 4 and travel. It was at the VA hospital, local VA hospital. I went back to New York for fellowship for a couple of years, but then I came back to Phoenix to practice for the following 9 years.
How long did it take you to pay off your student loan debt?
So I really am of the mindset that I do not like debt. So I paid that off fairly early. I bought a house when I was a second year resident. The value of houses was really, really cheap back then in Phoenix, Arizona. The first thing I did was I took out a physician's loan. So I maxed it out. I only put down 5% and I took out a 95%. And then at the time, the home loan that I got, it was a little bit better than the physician's loan, but whatever excess I took out in cash, I basically ended up paying off my school because a school loan is not forgivable. It also wasn't tax deductible at that time.
So remind me, just how many years did it take you to pay off the debt?
I paid it off fairly quickly. I think it took me about 5-6 years to pay it off.
Okay, and what is the income like for a nephrologist?
It depends on what type of practice you have. It really can vary. Like if you're in academic medicine, it is as low as $80,000 a year, surprisingly, especially in a big center. But, if you go to different areas, like for myself, the maximum was about $500,000 per year once I hit partnership level.
Okay, and that income is essentially all salary, right? There's not bonuses or other components to it for the most part?
We had a joint venture with dialysis units. So some of it is salary and some of it is actually a joint venture, a K1 type of remuneration.
Got it.
How many years were you at the 500,000 level?
I was about 3-4 years at that level.
Walk me through what financial independence looks like for someone who is able to earn that level of income. Did you want to build a portfolio capable of sustaining a several $100,000 a year lifestyle, or were you looking for more of kind of a modest financial independence and planning around that?
Being a physician is really difficult because you almost have to keep up with the Joneses and you have so much debt. So I paid that off within the first 5-6 years of my debt, within the first 5-6 years of graduating, becoming an attending basically. So a lot of it went towards that. The other part of it is that I was working crazy hours to the point where I was earning that much money, but I really wasn't able to spend a lot of it. So a lot of it was just sitting in the bank. And I also didn't have time to invest it as well. And we didn't have, for the first 2 years, we had a 401k, which was not very good, actually. And then they did away with it, I think, in year number 3 to 6. And so we didn't even have anything that we could put money towards. And I didn't have the time to research or, investigate. And I did not want to give it to a financial advisor because I'd had issues when I was younger where I bought into these mutual funds that were no good. And I ended up losing a lot of money what I felt was a lot of money when I was right after college,
What was the goal? Like when did you decide, hey, I'm going to actually begin working towards early retirement?
So when I quit private practice on December 31st, 2014, I just basically decided that I did not want to work. I did not want to come out of my house. I was at home for 3 months and I went online and I researched. I typed in, how to retire early, how to invest, and FIRE came up. That's how I found out about it. And so I sat down at the very beginning of 2015. I calculated my net worth. I realized that I was already FI at that point. It would have been a lean FI. It wouldn't have been a good FI for me, at least. And then I just kind of took that time frame to think about what I wanted and where I wanted to continue practicing or what I wanted to do. And so I started working again. But I learned how to invest from sitting down for 3 months and teaching myself online. I found Brandon, the mad scientist, and he was a really big influence. Actually, he spoke to me because he's so precise and nerdy that it really fits my personality well, and he's really into the super optimization. And then I found Mr. Money Mustache, BiggerPockets Money, all the above, I started really just listening and reading online a lot. Mr. 1500 was early on too.
So is it fair to summarize this with, you were a practicing physician for 9 years after residency, is that correct?
Yes.
So you earned up to $500,000 at maximum in any one of those given years. So can I say 300 to 500 for those 9 years in terms of gross income?
Probably 200 because we started off just below 200. Yeah. 200 to 500. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we earned somewhere between $3 and $5 million top line, had to pay off $500,000 in student loan debt and otherwise kind of keep up your life here. But you didn't really have a financial plan during that time period. You just kind of stuck this money away, maybe a little bit in a 401k, a lot in cash. Is that the right way to kind of think about what you're saying here? Up until 2014?
Yes and no. I mean, I did textbook case for the accidental landlord. I bought some property along the way. I initially bought a condo when I first moved back to Phoenix for work. I was living in a condo. My neighbors were really young. They would party until 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had to be up at 5. And so lack of sleep was definitely making me very grumpy. So I went ahead and bought a house back in 2009 at the bottom of the market where my friend was living in that same neighborhood. And then I bought another house later on in 2015 when I was doing some work up close to Sedona.
Okay, so we have a couple of properties that we added here. Did you invest, though, the rest of your cash, I'm assuming is $1 to $2 million in cash that's racking up here, in stocks or anything else? Or was most of the cash sitting in a bank account?
The majority was sitting in a bank account. I did have a little bit in the market in 401ks, mostly like the maturity date funds, target funds.
One of the things that, I want to talk about here is sometimes folks are like, oh, earning $500,000 a year, up to $500,000 a year, doctor situation, unrelatable. Well, this is 9 years. 2014 would have been, 15 years into a career or close to it for somebody else around there. And you're sitting with what I'm guessing is a net worth of around $3 million.
No, it was much lower, actually. I probably had my net worth was about 1 million because all my real estate was pretty low value at that time.
We had $1.5 million in net worth in 2014 when you decided to basically retire on the spot from your physician career. Is that right?
I decided to retire from my private practice physician career, but I continued on working. Yes.
Okay, got it. What I think is really interesting, though, about that, like if we just kind of sum that back up, 15 years to get to $1.5 million net worth, that is something that other non-physicians can achieve in that same period of time. The reflection, the changes you made at that point are something that many people, not just physicians, can learn from here. And I want to call out that I would imagine that not a lot of other physicians are accumulating much wealth at all, or that seems to be a stigma or something that is associated with physicians where maybe they're not able to accumulate wealth despite those high incomes. Did you find your peers not amassing much at all or spending in different ways than you during that period?
I feel like I was one of the thrift physicians amongst my friends. I wasn't going out and turning over my car every other year. I actually drove my Honda CR-V for over 12 years. I only upgraded because it wasn't making it up the hill to get me home, So, I keep my cars for a long, long time. All my other friends, they buy houses. They were wearing the latest fashion, newest watches, the newest cars all the time. So for them, money was like basically sifting through their fingers as soon as they got it. They were living pretty much paycheck to paycheck to pay off their lavish lifestyle.
I don't think non-doctors understand the level of keeping up with the Joneses that other physicians experience.
In my mind, I think it comes from because we have so much scarcity for so long, and we're so poor through our student years, residency, fellowship, that by the time it starts coming into us, we're like, oh, we need to start showing it off as soon as we can.
Just to add all that up and reinforce it, right? It's 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 1 or 2 years of residency. Is it 1 or 2?
It's 3 years of residency. And if you do further training, it's an additional 2 to 3 years. It really depends on the specialty. You can go as long as 6 years undergrad medical school if you do a combined program, which is very rare. But I did a 6-year route for undergrad because I had to go back and do my pre-med post-baccalaureate credentials, basically. So there's a lot of people that can do it. I think for me, it's a total of 15 years of training, basically, after high school.
Okay, so let's go back to the period of time between residency and fellowship. You took a year off and worked 3 days on as an ER doc and 4 days off. Did you ever think about just staying in that scenario or going back to that scenario?
I had already applied for a fellowship at that time. And really, like, ER is very, very stressful. I mean, I felt like it really trained me. Like, everything that happens in life, like, I feel like it does teach you new things. So I learned how to recognize sick people. I learned how to triage really quickly, So it gives you, like, every stage that you basically work, and at least in medicine, it gives you a lot of knowledge that I eventually ended up using towards my career later on. But I already had a fellowship spot waiting for me, and I knew that I didn't want to do ER because I feel like you need to know a little bit of everything and really be a master of nothing, which is really, really tough to do with my personality, because I'm the type of person that really likes to get really nitty gritty and very anal about things, so it kind of interferes with the way that I work.
You're one of those rare physicians that had no problem walking away fairly early. And most doctors that I know, that's their whole life, is being a doctor. At what point in your career did you decide that I don't need to identify as a doctor anymore?
When 2014, when I walked away from my private practice job, I realized that I didn't want this job to define me or be who I am. And I really just needed to rethink who I was and what I wanted for my life. I think it was just one of those transformational type periods. And then after that time frame, I decided that if I was going to work, I was going to work on my own terms. I was going to be the type of schedule that I wanted and when I wanted to work and how I wanted to work. The great thing about being a physician is that we are really lucky. There's always going to be work. It's just going to be how much you want it, at what kind. And I feel like those 9 years really gave me a lot of maturity, because it really made me realize this is not who I am. This is not what I want my life to look like in the future. And so I started retiring early, pretty much since that time frame. It took me 10 years to retire completely. I've only been retired for about 5.5 months at this point.
Okay, so 2014 was when you decided to retire with about $1.5 million in net worth, as discussed there. Walk us through the next 10 years and what you did to set yourself up for early retirement, both from an income perspective and from an investment and planning perspective.
I took a 3-month break where I just went online. I researched how to invest, and I did invest. I just started putting things towards index funds at that point, just slowly buying in and kind of trial and error a lot during that time frame. And then I decided that I did want to work after all that. And so I put my resume out for something called locums tenens, which is basically contract work for physicians. So if there's a shortage at a certain place, you just basically go and fill in those spots for that certain time of frame, whatever's available. So I started initially in Phoenix, and I had to go back to internal medicine and hospital work because I initially, in 2015, there were very few nephrology jobs available. It's kind of seasonal. I feel like it comes and goes. And so I went back and I did internal medicine hospital work for a period of a couple of years. And then one of them basically recruited me. It was in Northern Arizona, one of the hospitals. And I did sign on with them for about 5 years and then left that because I really was thinking of retiring at that point completely back in 2009, at the end of 2019. But COVID hit afterwards. And I felt bad walking away from all of that at that point.
How many hours were you working in those last 10 years after you decided you wanted to retire?
I was working about 2 weeks per month, and then I cut back to 10 days per month. And then I started doing 1 week per month. I did this all gradually, those 10 years. I basically cut it back to 1 week every 2 months. And there was nothing else to cut back to at that point. So I did decide to walk away at that point.
How was that process? I'm done, I'm leaving. Did you have any guilt leaving the profession now?
It was really a hard process to go through. I still have doubt in my mind. I mean, it's pretty stressful. I felt like I needed to invest in myself, my health. Like I'm such a bad role model when I tell patients, you need to lose weight, you need to sleep, you need to take care of yourself. And I'm not doing that advice, And walking away was a really, really difficult decision because I do enjoy it. And I really love the cerebral part of it, the thinking process. But I think that this is the right time frame for me to walk away. I mean, I don't think I'm doing myself a service if I'm really unhealthy and setting a really bad example for everybody else when I'm telling them to do something else.
Do you think you'll ever go back to practicing medicine?
I love helping people. That really is something that drove me towards this career. I don't think I'm ever going to go back in a professional level. If I ever have to get malpractice, then I probably will go back officially. But it's very difficult in medicine to walk away after a period of 3 months. Your credentials pretty much expire in the 3 to 6 months, and without any hospital or official work, you have to explain why you left the workforce at that point. There are some other open opportunities for me. If I want to go back to work, I could do outpatient practice, a consult type of basis. But if I ever go back, it won't, I don't think it's going to be for financial reasons. It'll be because I want to. But if at that point that happens, I would love to focus more on wellness and smaller group, hopefully like a more motivated group. I feel like the FI community would be wonderful to practice with, because the community is so well driven. They're driven. They want to always improve. And so I love that concept, but I don't think I want to go back at any point to the point where I need to have malpractice coverage. I don't mind curbsiding with friends and family, but I don't want to be in a situation where I have to go back and open up a practice and keep records and all the above.
So I have this rash.
That's really far from the kidneys, Mindy.
So what have you been doing for the last 5 months, and what are your plans going forward?
I've been traveling the last 5 months pretty much since I quit. I set 2 goals. Number 1, improve my health, which I have done halfways. I still have another 20 pounds to lose. And the other part of it was basically just find community and in the FI community. And so I've been trying to immerse myself in those experiences, and it's been great. It's been wonderful. I still kind of need to process this retirement thing because I just literally threw myself towards traveling and doing fun things in the last 5 months, but having slowly retired in the last 10 years, I feel like it's given me a leg up in being able to do that.
Susana, is there anything you want to share with our audience about the pursuit of financial independence from a high income standpoint?
I think that you really just need to figure out what your priorities are. I feel like those of us that earn a really high income, we live really high in the hog, and it's really a critical part. The concept of enough is really, really difficult for most of us that are high earners, And so you have to figure out that part. That's a really important piece of information for anybody that's in the FI pursuit, but especially for those of us that are high earners.
Can you tell us what Tuesday looks like for you right now, Susana?
Tuesday is wonderful. I love being in charge of my own time and deciding what I'm going to do, having choices. So I woke up around 8:30. I took an hour coffee break and thought about what I wanted to do. Then I went online and just did whatever I needed to do for the morning. And then I met with you guys. And then my afternoon plan is to go work out and probably take a hike or something, and do some yoga.
Awesome. A workout, a hike, and a yoga. That is very impressive. I love it. I always love asking that for folks that are retired early. And that sounds awesome. It sounds like you've got wonderful days lined up on a regular basis at this point.
Thank you.
Susana, thank you so much for your time today. This was a lot of fun, and it's always good to chat with you.
Thank you so much for having me. And I hope this story helps somebody else in the same journey.
I'm sure it will. Thank you, Susana, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
If you like this video, please click the thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more inspiring fire videos just like Susana's. This is Mindy Jensen and Scott Trench signing off.